If you need to come into my job, if you need whatever services, you need your name changed, whatever, we're going to go down to Fenway, we're going to get your name changed. You can't do this, we're going to go down here and we're going to get this. There's so many different resources now that I think that that trans women can now utilize. And I think it's up to us as cis men, as their brothers, like I said, brothers, fathers, cousins, whatever we are to them, to hold their hand and let them know that it's going to be okay and I am going to go with you.
Alright, so what we're trying to explore this evening is voguing, but voguing as a community, and also going into the chosen family concept and how it relates to the queer community. So we want to explore from experiences, personal experiences. With my prior knowledge, I know that Miss M had some time in the voguing scene back in the earlier days, and now Tyrick here is a part of the current voguing scene. So we have two different experiences of the voguing scene, and Craig is a part of the Worcester community as an former asylum seeker. And he's going to show us how that applies, how the chosen family concept applies in communities that don't necessarily have traditional family structures within the queer community. So to start out the evening, what I wanted to start out with is just to, as I said before, explore, Miss M, what was your experience at your first introduction to the ballroom scene? And kind of like, what have you learned about the history before you entered the ballroom scene, the ball scene, I should say?
Basically, I did not enter immediately. I have to gain that respect, that I have to gain that first. But in the meantime, they saw a lot of possibility with me, and they were basically preparing me. When I got to New York City, in 1983, the first person that picked me up out of a park, because I was homeless, I just wanted to experience New York. And once I got to New York, I didn't know where to go. It was Pepe La Beja, and that was my first experience. First, I did not know what a house was, did not know what a mother was, did not know what any of this was. So, she basically started talking to me and picked me up, took me to her home, offered me a home. And first thought is like, something is gonna happen. But no, it didn't. It was very something normal. She was very motherly. And she opened the door for me. She showed me what a ball was. It was the first time that I went, and I was probably about 17 with a fake ID. and that place, I had to earn it. She said, if you want to walk, you must earn it. You just don't come here and walk. And in the meantime, she was preparing me. Okay, so I was more femme queen, and she set me up for that. No other things, no, boy dressing as a girl, don't do nothing like that. You're gonna be a femme queen, you're gonna be a lady. So act like one, talk like one, and look like one. But of course, being too young and reckless, I just didn't listen. So I did not end up staying. So I ended up going to different houses, different people, but always going back to that first person that gave me the hands, that gave me the experience. And she was very open, even though that I was not part of her house. She was very open. She set me out, she brought me to my first ball and got me my first gown. She said, you're gonna be presented, so you're gonna look good. So I did, I looked good, nice dress, nice hair. So she was telling me how to act. She's like, oh, don't drink that. You don't drink beer. You have drinks in a glass. So I'm like, okay, can I have the beer in the glass? I'm like, no, okay. but it was really good experience. I walked only once, and after that, because I was jumping from house to house, she's just like, you know what, I can deal with you. You need to get yourself centered, and find your place because you're all over the place.
Was there an eventual house that you stick with for a longer period of time that you could say that might have been your home house, per se?
No, because every house have a rule. And if you don't follow the rules, you're out. And of course, being young, I did not want to follow rules. I wanted to set my own pace. And that does not work in a house. They have rules, you have chores, you have things that you do. If you are good doing makeup, that's what you're gonna do. You're gonna have makeup for everybody. If you're good cleaning, you're gonna help in the house. If you're good cooking, which was me, and Peppa loved her Spanish food. She loved that flavor. So I was in the kitchen most of the time. That was basically what I was set to do in that house specifically. In the other ones, I would last maybe 3-4 weeks, and then I will just, they will kick me out. That's God honest truth. Same way a family will be kicking you out of your home. They will do the same thing, no questions asked, but they're always watching for you.
So hearing what Miss M's experience has been, Tariq, how would you relate that to today's ballroom scene? Is there a difference? Is there common?
I don't think there's not a whole lot of differences. I think listening to Miss M talk and thinking about my own experiences and the experiences of the youth today, a lot of these skills, like I think hearing it on the first time hearing it, it's like, oh no, that's what you guys had to go through. But being young, LGBTQ, gay or trans, whatever, like we have to learn a certain survival skill. So a lot of these houses were teaching us how to survive. So when we get out of the ballroom scene after the ball is over and we have to walk up that street by ourselves or with our girlfriends, or it's daylight and it's time to get on the bus, all that glitz and glam, all that stuff is done, and it's time to step into the real world now. So when you step into the real world, walking up the street, you might not be accepted walking up the street with whatever you have on after that ball. I might have on a half of whatever and a half of something else and then something else to put on with a glitz and glam something, and it's not like that when you step outside. So listening to Miss M, a lot of that stuff is survival stuff that I learned the same stuff. My gay father is actually one of Peppa's kids as well. So funny that you said that. So I learned some of those same things too. I think today in the ballroom scene, it's a little easier to be in a house now. And when we talk about houses, we're talking about a lot of these are not literal houses, how they were in the 80s and in the 70s, where Peppa had a place, where now we call these like the House of Ebony has like an Ebony mansion, or so that was like La Beja mansion, because Peppa provided this literal home for her kids. Houses now are more like, if there's no like whatever house mansion, you can liken it to like a fraternity or sorority. It's a family in that way. There's a certain structure, like a mother, a father, whatever else, whatever titles are held in these houses, like a prince or princess. And in that way, like Miss M was saying, like if you don't fulfill your house duties, if you don't walk certain balls, if you don't keep your commitment and your dedication, then it's definitely like, okay, well maybe this is not the house for you. You might want to go somewhere else. But at the end of the day too, just because you're leaving a house and you're going under a different name doesn't necessarily mean that you lose that family. Because there's even people, I'm a St. Clair. I've only been in the house of St. Clair, but there are definitely people that have left the house and have gone and branched out and created their own house and stuff like that, but that's still my family. Like at the end of the day, when I go to New York and I see them and they see me, it's still that same family. We all still have the same father. We might not have the same house father, a house parent, but that's still my sister or my brother at the end of the day. So that familiar structure is still there.
So as we see, like the ball scene has definitely created very strong identities as well family names, family connections, and we saw the difference between the fact that it was an actual house back in the 80s and the early 90s, and compared to now where it's more of like a fraternity and kind of setting where people are just identifying with whichever house or family that they feel closely linked to. So I see where we're going into the chosen family concept, and this is where I would like to invite Craig into our conversation this afternoon. As you know, Worcester has the LGBTQ asylum seeker support task force, and it's one of the only task forces that do the kind of work it does throughout the United States. So it's really good that it's here in little Worcester for say. So Craig, my question is, how do you see the chosen family concept applied during your asylum seeking time, and also like now in the current batch of asylum seekers that are within the LGBTQ task force?
So I think the concept of the chosen family kind of evolved with the task force. The history of the task force started when Linford Cunningham, a gay Jamaican man, came to the United States and did not have the support. And through his lawyer and the Hadwin Park Congregational Church, he got support. And so he created his chosen family. And one of the original members of that chosen family, Michelle Smith, who is sitting in the back there, became part of that family. So it was a mixture of asylum seekers as well as Americans who were safe and supportive. When the sort of first batch of Jamaican asylum seekers came after Linford, he was the anchoring person and became almost like the mother for the group. And so all the folks who came after him, he was a connecting point. So I can remember coming here to Worcester. I was in Georgia, and when I was connected with the task force, I didn't know where I was coming. I did not know anything about Worcester. I came in the dead of winter, and I actually stayed with Linford until I was able to secure housing through the task force. And everybody who has come after that, Linford had some part to play in then becoming a part of the task force. As things evolved and as the task force became a little bit more widely known, then there are others who came almost like second generation immigrants. So many of the current asylum seekers who are here were connected to the task force from some of the original batch of folks who came. Because we did not have family here, or even folks who had family in the United States, it was not safe for them to connect with those family members because of their sexual orientation. And so we created sort of this family setting. When the group was smaller, it was easier to come together around holidays. I know Christmas was a big one, and so we'd get together in each other's house. We'd have parties or getting together on Fridays or going to the club. And so we created that family. We also shared our experiences with the asylum process and gave advice. When we came and we formed our network, because one of the things Linford did was when the initial batch, myself, Lamar, and a few others came, he ensured that he took us everywhere that he went, and he made the connection, he made the introduction, and did the networking for us. So when a lot of us, when it came time for many of us to work, it was through those networks that we were able to secure jobs. Because I can remember the job I'm currently in now, it was through Linford that I actually met the mayor, and then I interned in his office, and then sat on a few committees here in Worcester doing community work. And it was through there that I actually got involved in the work that I'm currently doing.
both in the voguing community and in the asylum seeking community, there's an application of finding those who can support you and those who actually cherish you for the person you are and choose who becomes family. So even within our asylum community, Linford is affectionately referred to as Auntie because of that fact that we see him as an individual that really truly seeks out the best for everyone that's within the community and try to apply his own network and knowledge to ease the struggle that a lot of asylum seekers can endure at times. And I feel like eventually it came down to us as the second batch of asylum seekers, and we have been just passing on the baton so as the years goes by. However, what I also want to explore is just like tell us a little more details about these Miss M, about the structures of the house. Like, what were some of the titles that exist, and what role exactly did these titles function in the house?
Okay, basically, let me bring all of you back. In about 1916, a lot of people start to move to the Northeast area, and they made New York City, especially Harlem area, that was the mecca of the ball scene. What happened is they started to trying to go to the regular ball, and they were not allowed. So what happened is they created their own ball. That's what is called a ball. In 1976, Crystal LaBeija, which was a contestant in one of those LGBT contests, she walked out of the stage because she thought that the person that won that night shouldn't win. And she fought about it. And she was the first person to create a house. She was the first mother of a house. Of course, after that came the mother, then came the father. Along came the brothers and sisters, and so on and so forth. Well, not only that, but Perry Supreme, Angie Extravaganza, they were the pioneers of them. Of course, Pepe LaBeija, they were the pioneers of the house. There was animosity within houses. Which one was more beautiful? Which one was more glamorous? And instead of fighting against each other, they brought those fights into the ball. Let's bring it to the floor. Let's see who's more fierce, And that's how it starts. So, old way versus new way, there is a lot of difference. Of course, everybody started to read the Vogue magazine. What was the other one? There was another, Harper Bazaar, things like that. So that came the idea of all this posing and stuff like that. Now, that was in the 80s. Now, if we move to the 90s, Madonna did not create the Vogue. No. She took it out of that. She was not.
So I think when we touch on Madonna, though, like a lot of individuals in the LGBTQIA plus community sees her as an ally, in a sense. But how do we now redress this in saying, well, how do you truly practice allyship? Is it just taking what you see in the community, utilizing it because that's the only pearl you found to be able to make it, a regular public thing? Or is there other ways of truly being an ally? Tyra, do you have anything on this part?
I have so much. There are so many ways to be an ally. I think now with the ballroom scene being way more mainstream than it was even before I came out in like 2004, There's so many different people and like organizations and like all different types of things trying to feed off of whatever's going on in the ballroom scene. So now it's not allyship, it's just like appropriation. Like, okay, everybody is saying, okay, poses on TV, poses coming on FX. Oh my God, that looks so cool. You know what? I want to have this thing for the community and stuff like that. And that's nice. Like the intentions are usually good, but it's just the way that it's being executed is like, oh no, you actually can't have this ball. Like you don't even have, who are you reaching out to? Like you haven't reached out to anyone in the ballroom scene to even know what a category is. Like I've seen flyers and the category is like chair realness. Like that's not a category. Like that's not like, and then you know RuPaul's Drag Race is on and everything is called like something realness, like painting realness or something realness. Those are not categories in the ballroom scene. Like that's not even, that's literally like not a thing. Like realness is a category, but like, oh my God, black boot realness. Like no one's, that's not, how can you compete in black boot realness? Like that's, it doesn't even, to ballroom kids, hearing that doesn't make any sense at all. Like, cause there's femme queen realness, there's butch queen drag realness, there's butch queen realness, and that's kind of like trans men realness, and kind of like that's it. But I think the way to be an ally is, I would say by coming to things like these, like if you want to be an ally, come like start off by going to workshops. Like Miss M was saying, like they didn't allow her to just jump in and be like, oh yeah, walk this ball, girl. Oh no, baby, you have to, what's going on with you first? Like, you know, let's see what's going on with you. How are you going to represent this house? How are you going to, what are you going to do? How are you going to be in it? Yeah. So I think the same thing for people that want to become allies of the ballroom scene. Be educated first and be very intentional on what you're trying to do. Like, don't just do it just because it's like, oh, this cool thing is going on. Like, this is not a fad. Like, for some of us, these are the ballroom scene is a serious outlet. Yeah. Like, even for myself, and then my gay kids, and then my whole entire community of kids in Boston. But we have like Vogue Hour for the kids to come and Vogue from like 6 to 8. A lot of those youth need Vogue Hour from 6 to 8 because they don't have no other outlets. They can't go. Nobody's not going to play basketball and all that, and there's not a whole bunch of dance teams, and like, you know, we're gay and like we want to express ourselves in that way. So sometimes I might want to snap my neck a certain way and not be looked at. Yeah. Or I might want to put on a wig, and I might want to, you know, roll on it. I don't know what I want to do. Yeah. But I just want to be expressive, like in creating those spaces for them to do that. But I think, like I said, to be an ally, I think definitely education is key. Educate yourselves on exactly what the ballroom scene is, what it's used for, why are people walking these balls, and like learn like the correct terminology. Like Charger Cole's running around here saying shablams. There's no such thing as a shablam. There's really no such thing as a shawam. It's really called a dip.
It's called
like,
a dip.
Yeah, like so it's like all these things that, and like people are saying like, oh yeah,
it
shablam.
kills me every
like,
time I hear a dead drop.
I can't take
What
it.
is a dead
it's
drop?
like blood in my ears. Like I cannot take it. So like
now, let me, you know, in that same respect, let me tell you, I don't know how many people have seen Pose, but Pose, what it's doing is telling a story that did happen back in the 80s. Every single episode, ever since I first started, I relieved again and again every day of my life, seeing people being murdered, seeing people getting raped, abused. Because I was part of it. Venus Extravaganza was my best friend. Which, of course, Pepe Loeja is like, I don't want you with Venus because I know that you're going to be going to the pier.
Yes, yeah.
But I love the pier. I love him. Okay? And as I returned from a trip, I heard that she got killed. If I was not in that trip, I would probably get killed with her. Because we were like really tight. Miss Candy having a hammer. Yes, we did. We had hammers, we got screwdrivers. We used to have the 2 side razor blades in our mouth. Just in case. We had to live. We had to make a living. In order for us to make a living, I did not know anything I couldn't do anything, but of course, just go to the streets. But I have to be careful. So I will put a double-sided razor blade, and whoever tried to do something funny, I would not hesitate to slash their face, because that's the first thing. You will hide things in your hair, under the wig, things like that. So Pose is telling a story. Every single episode might be a little bit exaggerated, might be under expressed, but it is a story. And I'm glad that Pose came out, because it had opened up everybody's eyes, even with the bad category. It is true. It is true. Just they are giving you a little taste. So if you do your researches, you will find out that everything in Pose, every single episode, is a real life, real person. I don't know, Miss Electra. It just reminds me Angie Extravaganza and Saint Laurent. What's Octavia Saint Laurent, which was one of the first females posing for magazines. And she was the second, because the first one was in the early 80s. It was a clay roll. Yes, Africa. Thank you. See, I'm getting old, so I'm forgetting names. But it is true. It is a story. And I'm so glad that it's disseminating that story to the new generation. That way, those people are not forgotten. I wish, with all my heart, I follow up rules. Yes, I wish I did. I wish I was Alabeja. With so much honor, I will wear that name. But I didn't listen. So that's the consequences. That is the consequences. So I'm sorry.
And as we explore that, I realized there's two specific communities that we just mentioned that I think I want to highlight just a little more. One is trans women of color and the violence and the situations that they were faced with during the 1980s and continuing to now. Hence why we have a table in the back honoring trans women who have died this year, and kind of like how they might not have been honored enough in our community and also protected enough. I don't think there's enough effort given to trans women of color issues. And also I hear you speaking about queer men of color and how the ballroom scene was the only avenue provided for them to explore that effeminate nature if they so wish to, and kind of like how that compares to their general environment where masculinity is a really treasured thing in men of color circles. So firstly, could you just speak a little more about how the ball scene allowed for one to be a queer man of color to explore the feminine aspects of himself?
Yeah, so I think the biggest form of expression that we have in the ballroom scene is definitely voguing. I think back in the day, like in the 80s, I don't know if it was as feminine because there was no Vogue Femme category. So there was like what we call today is old way, which is more like lines and posing and stuff like that. I think back in the day in the 80s, it was more about shade. Who could be the shadiest person when they're doing this pose, and whatever move I'm giving you. And then I think Tiny LaBeija was the one that rode Vogue Femme out. Vogue Femme is like which queen's voguing like a femme queen. Because in those times, our femme queens were the jewel of the ballroom scene. And everybody wants to do what the femme queens was doing. So I think at that time that was the outlet for gay men to go and do that. And then there's also like European runway, where if you want to feel like you want to sashay up the runway, you can do that. But I think it was really important because, like you said, coming from our communities, and a lot of us is, we're from the hood. Let's just say what it is. Like, a lot of us is from the hood that's in the ballroom scene. We can't walk around the hood like that where we're from. We can't walk around our projects and feel like, well, it's 2019 now. It might be a little different now. Yeah, you can't walk around and be as feminine as you want to be, or express yourself how you might want to express yourself on an everyday whatever, even going to work, like, as a gay man. There's certain things, like, even just learning things from home, it's kind of always in the back of your mind of like, oh, let me not do that. Actually, let me contain this professional attitude or whatever I have going on. Let me not throw my hand like this, or let me not do that, depending on where you work. And if they're accepting of your sexuality or whatever, how you are. But I think the ballroom scene is definitely important for queer men of color, specifically Black and Latino folks, Black and Latino men, because we don't get to express ourselves. And if you don't get to express yourself, like, you'll go crazy or something like that. Like, if you can't naturally be yourself, then who are you? You know what I mean? And so, like, the ballroom scene and going to balls allows you to be that person, whoever you want it to be. It allows your whole entire alter ego. If you feel like you want to be Diana Ross one night, you come out and be Diana Ross one night. You want to be whoever you want to be that night, you can come out there and be that person that night. It might only be for that night, but, like, at least you got some of that stuff out, because keeping stuff like that bottled in can really drain you, which is, I think, another reason why we have a lot of suicides going on. Like, people are not able to be themselves and express themselves how they want to and be accepted for it. So if there was no ballroom scene, I would imagine that some of the suicide rates amongst young Black and Latino men would probably be skyrocketed through the roof if it wasn't for, like, the ballroom scene. Because I don't think people know exactly how big the ballroom scene is, because it's been underground for so long, and, like, now seeing it on TV on, like, Pose, and there was something else on, in Paris is Burning and stuff like that. Like, it's just giving thank God for that, so we can have those things, so we can go and release that, because you can't even cry at home. You know what I mean? Like, in our homes, like, if you cry too much, they're like, oh, man up. Like, first of all, you slice my finger off, and I can't breathe, and I need to cry. Like, and you can't even stuff like it's dramatic, but, like, it's really stuff like that at home where you cannot express yourself. So these places, balls and stuff like that, are the place where you can go, and it's important for that.
But, and I'm sorry that I interrupt you, but let me put it this way, and you're completely right. The biggest rate of suicide amongst the LGBT community is because the non-acceptance. I come from that. Okay, I always felt like a lady, and I started my transition back then in New York City because it was, it was my door. The door opens up for me. When I moved, that I'm like, it is true. Peppa said you got to do something for yourself. So I did. I went back to college. I had to start, saving money. And the system stopped me from being who I was. They told me, cut your hair. They told me, you got to stop the liner. You got to clip your nails. So I basically became something that I was not happy. I was very professional. I'm a clinical social worker. I work with the community. I work with the disabled community, which they have very little of knowledge of what's going on. And they are very accepting. But society make you do stupid things. And did I thought about ending my life? Yes, because I was sad. I was never happy. But I found a family. Now in 2019, I'm regaining myself. I'm taking the stand. And I'm going back. And I will assure you that I will die the woman I was born to be. I will not be this man. And society will never tell me what I should or shouldn't do. Little by little, but for sure.
So that, sorry. I'm just a part of the new family, so I'm crying. But as we talk about that, we go into what I call the double minority factor that a lot of other members of the LGBTQ community doesn't face, as we who are people of color, immigrant, asylum seekers, that we face. So it's kind of like a double jeopardy issue, because not only are you gay or LGBTQ, but you're also a person of color. So you're facing double jeopardy with every issue. So I'll push this to Craig. How do you see the double minority factor really impacting the chosen family concept?
One is not even a double. Sometimes it's a triple sort of discrimination that you're facing. So coming predominantly from a country where everybody looks like me in terms of skin color, and we don't have racism, and then coming to the United States where racism is alive and kicking, you find yourself then being grouped into a class that you had no idea that you were part of that class, right? And I often say to folks, while there is not racism in Jamaica and much of the English-speaking Caribbean, there was classism. However, with education, you were able to straddle some of those lines with classism. So one of the things, and I'll talk about my own experience, one of the things that I was faced with coming here is that I could straddle those lines. I was born poor, and through education I was able to straddle those lines when I needed to be among my people, and among my people when I needed to be with the educated elite. I could sort of have that conversation. So here in the United States, you're now an immigrant, you're LGBTQ, and most people will classify you as African American. And sort of the discrimination that each of those groups face. So, one of the discrimination is from your own people. As we talked about within the Black and brown community, homophobia is still alive, even here in the United States. And many youth and adults do face that discrimination. Many families have disowned them, have abandoned them, and therefore you find that folks will oftentimes find, that chosen family because of that. But also within the gay community, which a lot of folks don't talk about, even within the gay community, you experience racism. And so even in choosing that chosen family, even though you have some commonalities because you're all members of the LGBTQ community, those might, some folks within the community might not be safe to be your chosen family. And so you kind of have to really choose who then you associate yourself with, who will support you. And what you will find, particularly for like the asylum seekers, they will remain within their nationality groups in terms of creating that chosen family, because that's what's safe, right? We have common history, we have common experiences, as opposed to being in other groups that you might not be accepted fully. And it creates, having left the country because you felt out of place, and then coming to a country where you thought that you would have been accepted with open arms, particularly because of what you heard, and then when you come, you have certain experiences. It's disheartening, and many people sort of fall into depression, and that is oftentimes where that chosen family comes in order to support you. They are the people that you go to. Oftentimes they are not able to support you financially, but they can provide other supports for you. And sort of that has kept a lot of folks from, just falling off. Because if it wasn't for that support, many folks would not, still be here. Many of the people who have come as asylum seekers, the experiences that they had back in their home country, some of them were homeless, being on the street from they were youth, having to do some of the things that you guys mentioned, having to create those families within the storm drainage in Kingston or Montego Bay. And then coming here, they thought that they would have had a better life. But coming to realize that the odds are stacked against them, especially those that come with very little skills. And so this is where they will, find those supportive group and create that family to kind of sustain them as they're here going through their process. And unfortunately, because we have changed our immigration system so much, there are folks who are still waiting to get any kind of immigration status for 5 years. It took me 4 years to actually get an interview. So thinking about living in that limbo and then facing all the oppression that we talk about.
So I can recall back in when we were just getting here, like after one of our fellow asylum seeker, she has a child, and I remember her getting her first job and being like she had no family members around, and she had to go to work during hours that the child would have to be at home, and it's like, who is gonna take care of this child while she needs to go to work, because she's the only breadwinner for her and her entire household. And now she probably has 23 different uncles listed at school because she has like 600 gay uncles, and a couple gay aunts and allied aunts. So it's kind of like showing that even though we may come here from very different backgrounds, many of us didn't know each other before we got here, but we got here in the same situation, and we realized that, and we all stepped up and played our role. I remember babysitting for weeks because I had no job, so why not, and I've always liked taking care of kids, ever since I was younger, combing hair and all that, putting it up in a bun and all that. It's all my thing. It shocked me too when my grandma was like, "You're gay?" Duh. But I digress. So we just wanted to get back to the ballroom scene, and as you said, trans women were the pearl. Everyone looked up to them. They really created most of the concepts around it. How do you see the current, atmosphere that trans women, especially trans women of color, survive in now within the LGBTQ community? Do you see where there is more opportunity for the LGBTQ community to respond in a more supportive way to help protect trans women?
Yes.
Sorry.
I definitely think so. I think in 2019 we have some moving forward, some progression in terms of, especially like trans women in the workplace. I feel like, I don't really like to speak on trans women issues because I'm not a trans woman, so I don't really like to, but I guess I can talk from my experience with my sisters. I feel like there was one time where all there was for a Black or Latino trans woman to do was sex work, survival sex, and that's what was going on. Because there were no jobs that were willing to hire them, especially if you weren't passable, right? So I think now in 2019, where I won't say a lot of laws are being passed, but where there's a lot more trans women getting a lot more jobs now. So I think for cis men, us as their brothers, I think we should be supporting them in a way of if you if you don't have certain skills because you started sex work so early, what skills do you need to actually find a job? What can we do to get your resume together? And then also, so one thing that I do with my trans sisters is if they feel like they can't make it, or oh girl, I'm never gonna get a job, it's not girl, I don't know how to do nothing. Actually, your customer service skills are literally A1, and you don't even know it. Like, you don't understand that every time you put that ad up, like, first of all, you have to put up an ad for them to call you, so you already have those skills. That's marketing. So you have to market yourself for that phone to ring. So you have to know what pictures to use, what words to say, what's going to get them through the door. So you're using your marketing skills right now. You're using your customer service skills to get them over there. You're talking and saying what you need to say to get them over there. All that stuff works. And I am a former sex worker. Everything that I learned in that way, I use it all. That's how I talk now when I sit at the table with people and stuff like that. Like, so like using those skills and turning them around, of like not even knowing that you had this skill, right? So doing a little motivational interviewing with them sometimes, and then letting them realize that they have all these skills. Okay, and let's put these skills to the test. Like, and if you don't feel like, if you don't want to go down here by yourself, I will go with you. Like, you know, and not letting them just feel like, oh, okay, I can't do this. You can. I'm going to hold your hand through this whole entire way. If you need to come into my job, if you need whatever services, you need your name changed, whatever, we're going to work on. We're going to go down to Fenway. We're going to get your name changed. You can't do this. We're going to go down here and we're going to get this. There's so many different resources now that I think that that trans women can now utilize. And I think it's up to us as cis men, as their brothers, like I said, brothers, fathers, cousins, whatever we are to them, to hold their hand and let them know that it's going to be okay, and I am going to go with you. I think, like I said, back in the day, the femme queens, or the trans, we say femme queens in ballroom.
As long as you don't say Miss Sting.
Right. I think the femme queens were definitely the Jew. Like, they were the breadwinners. They had to go out there and hit the streets and make that money to take care of the whole family. And I think that, you know, we owe it to them, especially ballroom folks, like, to help them get out there to where we're at. Not that we're not on the same level, but, like, there are definitely some unfair things going on. So, like, you know, just be there for them and help them do whatever resources.
Miss M, do you have something to add?
Of course. I mean, being as... let's put it this way. A professional, being a profession in that kind of profession basically got me to college. I want to get out of it because I felt that if I continue, one day I was going to be found somewhere. That's what it got me into college. In college, I used that. You know, I used those skills to get through college and have no problem at all. But in the other hand, us trans women are, or we have been since mid-80s, segregated by the LGBT community. And look how ironic that is. It's LGBT, T at the end. Okay, so we brought everything up to the light. We're the one who fought for the rights that we're having, because thanks to Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera, is that we're getting all this luxury of just going out, holding hands with our partners, you know, but we were pushed back. And one of the things is that I will definitely give credit to everybody, but I mean everybody, gay, lesbian, transgender men, transgender women, cisgender, gender bender, whatever, you know, thank you, really thank you, because you're following, you're abolishing all this nonsense that, you know, kept us so far behind. We're moving forward, like you said, we're moving forward, and that's a good thing. That is a good thing. I have a son, which was born a daughter. And my son, at the age of 12, told me, don't put any more dresses on me because I don't like them. I'm like, so what do you like? Jeans, sweaters, baseball hats, sneakers. Good, let's go to the store and do that. At 16, he told me I wanted to be a boy. I told him, when you turn 18, that you can make your own mind, and you can choose if that's the path you really wanted to go. Why not? He's 19 now. I got a real beautiful son. I said I lost a daughter, but I got such a handsome son. It's not even funny. But transgender people, we just, we're being pushed to the back. And
well, we will never have enough time to really explore the in-depths of voguing and the chosen family concept and also trans issue. But tonight, I'm sure we have really wind a whole lot into this 1 hour of conversation. And what I want to do right now is just throw it out to the audience for you to post some questions to the panel about what you've heard tonight, or something that you just had some concerns over or some interest in when you decided to come to the programming.
I wonder if in your chosen family there's talk or plans for going back to Jamaica to say, if you were to come with these skills, while you wait for that interview, try to get these skills. Is that even possible, or?
So most folks who come here to seek asylum, it's not a luxury that a lot of folks have to say, I'm coming to the United States, which, some folks believe. Literally, most people are fleeing for their lives. Somebody within the community might help you with your plane fare to get here. Because if you stayed, you would be killed. And so there's not much time to sort of plan and to say, let me have these skills. Plus, some of the challenges that the LGBTQ youth here has is the same challenges that folks in Jamaica have. So you are kicked out at your house at 12. Your schooling, virtually has ended. If you are not passing, then nobody will hire you. And so you don't have those skills. And folks will, there's controversy about what, sex work, that is not really work. But most folks will, engage in sex for survival, for pay. And so that is the skills that they have. And this is where some of the people within the LGBTQ community who can help others can step in and mentor, and, so what you were talking about, helping them to hone some of those skills that though they might have learned them in ways that society might look down on them, but they're still skills that folks have. The other bit is where we who have left Jamaica and are in a space where we can do some advocacy, is to advocate for changes in laws, changes in cultural practices, changes in belief system that will improve the conditions of folks. Because as immigration changes, as forced migrants are seen as burdens on society, it makes it more difficult for LGBTQ folks to get here. Because in many countries, not just the US, they are putting barriers up for people coming to seek asylum. And so that might not be something of the future as we go, forward.
So I think you guys kind of talked about this a little bit. I work in a company where right now we have this goal of diversity and inclusion. And it was interesting, they had a panel, and it was an LGBTQ panel. But the interesting thing for me was like everyone that was in the panel were white people. And I hope this is a safe space, so I'm just gonna say things as my perception was. And I didn't feel represented because, I was there not as part of the LGBTQ network. I was just there as a diversity and inclusion person, which means I'm a person of color that migrated to the United States. That's a separate issue. But I guess if you were there, let's say that you were in this panel, what would you suggest my company to do? Because my goal is to influence in whatever way I can to have more people of color, trans women of color, trans men of color, which we don't have. And I feel like a lot of times they are very underrepresented, especially in the workplace. So what kind of advice would you give a company like where I work to either have resources or to have a more diverse workforce? Because creativity comes from every color, every race, every gender, every expression, and I feel like we are very low. Like everyone there was just speaking from a very privileged, platform. No one there came from poverty. Everyone had like very accepting families, and no one really experienced rejection or homelessness. So I guess my question is like, if you were sitting at that panel, what kind of advice would you give my company to make our workforce more diverse?
I'm an unapologetically black gay man. So I would not, if I were you, I would be, like after it was over, I would have definitely sent an email. And I would have been very nice about it and just let them know, like, thank you all for, for your efforts in trying to create diversity and stuff like that. And also moving forward, maybe the next time it would be great if we had a more of a diverse panel. Maybe the panel should reflect the people that are in the audience. Because if you're only coming from one place, from like cis white men that are like, even if they are gay, we don't have the same struggles. And it is what it is. Like at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like no one's apologizing for it. It just is what it is. Even at my job, I work at a place called Casa Esperanza. I don't speak one piece of Spanish at all. Thankful they hired me. I don't know how they hired me, but whatever. But even sometimes then I feel like I definitely feel like I am the minority in there. And then when I have issues, when I speak to my supervisor and stuff, I'm like, I understand what's going on, but also I need you guys to understand too that I'm the only black man here. Yes, we are all people of color. Yes, we are definitely all people of color, and some of our struggles are the same, but my struggle is totally different from you all's. So sometimes, we're gonna have to include different things, and we need to see different things. It can even be as small as, let's put some posters on the wall. Let's get some people of color on these walls. Let's get some safe space stickers. So we can all feel safe and we can feel like we can say whatever we need to say. I would definitely suggest. I would definitely send an email. I would just really send a nice email and just kind of let them know, as nice as you possibly can, like, hey, like moving forward, we need more diversity. If we're going to be doing panels like this, if you guys are trying to create, if you're trying to create a diverse whatever, then it literally needs to be diverse. Not sitting here looking at all the same people sitting on this panel trying to tell me about what they went through, and your struggle could have been like, oh, I lost my job when I was 18, I lost my job and da-da-da-da. When we were 18, I can't even think about no job right now. I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to eat something tonight. So that is not even nowhere near on my radar. So just send that email.
Hopefully I'm not going to have to say for my last email.
Hopefully not. And then you come back and see me and we'll write an email together.
Do we have any more questions?
So I just wanted to comment a little bit. So it takes a little bit more than a forum or a panel discussion to create that diversity. You have to create that culture that will support. So it starts in recruiting and then having policies to retain and to support the diversity. So it has to start there. A commitment, a real commitment. Because oftentimes when we have problems, we think a training fixes it, and I come and I talk at you for a bit, and that's it. So it has to start sort of with recruiting and then creating the environment. Because as you're saying, the issues that you will face as a person of color, you have to feel supported in your organization or you're going to leave. And so I'll talk to you after.
So I just wanted to also add a little bit to that. I think like a lot of times in diversity and inclusion trainings, what they neglect to do also is check privilege. Because if privilege is not checked, you can't have any diversity or inclusion. Because privilege is definitely the enemy of diversity and inclusion. So maybe what you could say next time, if you're having a cisgender all-white panel, it must be a privilege check-in panel, not a diversity and inclusion panel. So I think you could show them, well, maybe your efforts were more towards addressing privilege and not really diversity and inclusion, because you have to remove privilege from those who have the power to allow for that diversity and inclusion to happen first before you can actually encourage diversity and inclusion. So that would just be my only suggestion, that if they could redo that, they should redo that panel as a privilege check-in panel, then go move on to an actual diversity and inclusion panel. So that's my 2-piece on it. Thank you everyone for coming out. We will be having a part 2. Our part 2 will focus on creativity and unapologeticness, and it's kind of like showcasing how Voguing and the Voguing scene has utilized things that they were denied and turned it into a creative and unapologetic art form. So I hope to see you guys at the next part 2. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.